The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Uh, again, I apologize for the last minute communications. Yesterday, we had an internet outage here at PAA. Actually, a lot of Central Ohio was experiencing internet outages and power outages. So that was something that we had to deal with yesterday. But I appreciate everyone's flexibility and patience as we figured that out. Um, so this morning we do have a special guest, Aubrey Page, and she'll have an opportunity to introduce herself shortly. But before we go into our legislative topic for today, I do want to discuss a few, I guess, housekeeping things. Uh, First and foremost, just wanted to mention the 2020 census. Uh, Ohio generally is above the national response average. We have about 69.1% of households having filled out the census as of the end of August, and the national response rate is 65%. So we're doing well, but similar to past censuses, the Appalachian area is lagging behind the rest of the state. So if you operate or work or live in one of the counties shown by this graphic to the right of the text, uh, I would ask that you guys help spread the word. Usually, the census count lags in areas that have fewer resources when it comes to government supports and things of that nature. So it's harder to get the word out. Just an FYI, as a state, we're doing fine, but we really want to make sure that we have our Appalachian folks properly represented. Again, every census response is more money coming to our state, is the chance to receive greater representation at the federal level. It's very important that we have the most accurate count possible in order to make sure that our state receives all the resources needed from our federal government. Just a few numbers in southeastern Ohio. You have Athens County is at 60.7%, Hawken County is at 61.7%, Morgan County is at 57.6%. Just a quick snapshot. We really need, uh, a more participation from our Appalachian counties in that part of the state. So just want to add that as an FYI. Second FYI, just want to discuss voting options for this fall. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about the absentee voting by now. I'm sure some of you have thought about early voting. As of right now, all of that is on the table. There will be in-person voting at some locations. You just need to contact your county board to make sure that that is something that can be done. I did receive a message that you guys can't see my screen. Give me 1 second. You guys should be able to see it. I'm not quite sure why. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Continuing on. Once you receive your absentee application, or you can either print it out. I know that the Secretary of State did say that he was going to try to mail it out to every registered voter by Labor Day or around Labor Day. So a lot of you, or the majority of you, should have received that by now. You can send it back in at any time, and the ballots will be mailed out from the Board of Elections on October 6th. So if you've mailed your absentee ballot out but haven't received the ballot yet, that is why they are uh, obligated via statute to mail it out on that October 6th date. And that's also when early person voting starts as well. So if you have any questions, please contact your local county board of elections. Now, I am actually going to pass the mic to Aubrey, and she can kind of introduce herself. But Aubrey has uh, been extremely instrumental in helping us work on some FASD legislation um, in the General Assembly, and has been, working with me closely over the past couple of weeks to get some stuff introduced in the House. So, Aubrey, I'm going to pass the mic to you. It says that you're self-muted, so if you could unmute yourself and say hi to everyone. So it looks like Aubrey's having some mic issues, and I think she's going to try to call in. So give us a couple minutes to hash out this technical difficulty, and we will be back shortly.
Ah, there we go. Okay. Woo! That was
All right, awesome.
sorry, guys.
Technology, terrible. All right,
Yeah.
awesome. So Aubrey, thanks again for agreeing to. Oh, you even have the webcam up. That's awesome.
Yes.
Thanks again for agreeing to hop on and be a panelist for today's webinar. So if you could just introduce yourself, that'll be great.
Yeah, so my name is Aubrey Page, and I'm an FASD educator. I'm based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And I started doing this because I'm a foster parent, and also my house is getting worked on today, so hopefully there will be no super loud noises. I might mute when I'm not talking, but that's also why I'm on my porch and not in my office. So I started out as a foster parent. I've been a foster parent for 4 years now, and as I was working with kids, I of course saw the trauma. Like, we're really well trained in trauma-informed care, but I saw something else. There was something else that was going on with most of the kids, if not all of the kids that I have cared for, but also a lot of my friends. So after my first placement, my agency asked me to mentor other families, and I was just like, this is all a similar experience that we have. And as I looked into it, I realized that we were all parenting kids with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. But there's in fact no place to get diagnosed in Southern Ohio at all. The closest places are Toledo, Stark County, and Cleveland. And those are kind of hit and miss and have very long wait lists. So it seems like, why would we even care about this? Like, it's pretty rare, right? But in fact, FASDs affect 5% of the population, 1 in 20 people. That's a really significant number. And so a lot of what I do is I do trainings for a lot of professionals, social workers, teachers, some medical professionals, which is awesome. And then also a lot of foster parents and other caregivers who are caring for individuals on the spectrum that don't know, like, what do I do now? So I work a lot in the intervention space. But I have started working on prevention a little bit with Prevention Action Alliance. But the reason that it's so important that we get the word out is because there's a lot of stigma associated with it. And sometimes if we're not careful with our verbiage from a prevention perspective, it can be very stigmatizing. So I believe no woman drinks with the intention of harming her baby. And so we have to emphasize that when we're talking about this, because so many women don't come forward and say something because of the shame factor. So how do we kind of break down that barrier and help families? Doesn't matter how this happened, how do we help and support you now? So that's something that I'm really passionate about. And as I was doing prevention work this week, this is FASD Awareness Month, the entire month of September. And today is actually International FASD Awareness Day. So as I've been doing work this month on raising awareness, I work a lot on social media. I think we had about 40,000 impressions over the first week. And then today we have a video that I expect to go pretty popular. So find me on social media. It's fun. It's got music. But as I've been talking to people, I realize how triggering this is. It is a very difficult subject to talk about, but we have to talk about it because in Ohio alone, we have 585,000 individuals on the spectrum. That's 5% of Ohio. So how are we serving these people? Reality is we're not doing a very good job. So how do we kind of open up the doors, get the education we need in order to help this population?
Awesome, and very good point, Aubrey. So now I'm going to move to Senate Bill 340, and this bill was actually done in collaboration with Bonnie Schumann, who sits on the FASD steering committee, and she has a child who has FASD, and we were able to get this introduced, a couple months ago, and it was recently referred in the Senate to the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and the sponsors are Senator Coonsey and Senator Fetter. The whole point of this bill is to require the alcohol warning, similar language to the Surgeon General's warning, at the point of sale at establishments that sell alcohol. And Aubrey, I don't know if you can speak to, any research or data about the efficacy of having that warning at the point of sale as opposed to on the bottles and on the boxes that we currently have.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that. So I think that this is a really difficult thing to study because, of course, as we garner more awareness, we're going to have more diagnoses, right? And that's the goal. Only 1% of our population is ever diagnosed. And so it's not like as we start talking about this in places that matter, diagnosing is going to go up. However, what they found with the study in Oregon was that the numbers of babies being born with fetal alcohol effects was dropping based on signage that coinciding with the timing that they had put up signage. And there has been conflicting studies as to whether or not it changes a person's opinion as to whether or not it's safe. But what we do know is that the exposure to the information in many different places with your doctor, with the signs, with the bottles, everywhere, then we do actually make an impact on people's opinion. Right.
And at the end of the day, this is really a no-cost preventative measure that our liquor permit holders or our liquor establishments can implement to help the greater good, to help public health. The way that we phrase this bill, there is no punitive measure, so we're really relying on the community to kind of keep their liquor permit holders accountable. But at the end of the day, again, it's to increase awareness, is to add just another level of, hey, this can happen if you choose to drink while you're pregnant, and we want to make sure that our community is as healthy as possible. So we are also trying to get companion legislation introduced in the House. And Aubrey actually took the initiative on this and contacted her representative. Aubrey, do you want to talk about your experience with that? Because I really do think it's important for people to understand the power of advocacy, right? We cannot do the work at the state level without you guys from the field coming to us with the research, with the firsthand accounts, with the information. And as constituents, you all have a lot of power and a lot of sway, more than you know. So do you want to talk about that experience?
Yeah, for sure. More than I knew, definitely. So I had contacted, there was federal legislation for FASD funding. So right now there's virtually no funding. And of course, when we're talking about 19 million Americans, that doesn't make any sense. So there was legislation in the federal level, and I had contacted my federal senator And nobody responded. Nobody wrote back an email. It was nothing. And so I had not pursued contacting the state level because I just assumed it was the same deal. Then I went to DD Awareness Day back in March, and it was right when all of this was starting. Like, they shut down the Arnold. It was like that time. And I met my senator and my representative, and I specifically got to sit down and talk to my representative one-on-one for a while. And we talked about what it was like for me parenting the kids, and he lives like right down the road from me, right? That's the thing about representatives, is they're like right in your area.
Right.
So, so I mean, like, his kids go to the same school, like, it's really small. So, so I really enjoyed my conversation with him, and I felt like it was good. He had said, yes, I can do a PSA for you, but then like everything happened, the world happened. And so I did not contact him again. And then I led an effort in August to encourage people to advocate to their legislators. Like, we can't just talk about this, we have to do something about it. So how do we talk to people in our community? And that social media campaign reached about 50,000 people. But then I actually had to call, right? Like, I can't just tell everybody to do that and then I don't do it. So, so I set up a meeting with him. His office responded. He has an aide, and they responded, set up the meeting. We talked. He was like, yeah, I could introduce that. Like it was no big deal. I was like, okay, so
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
then let's do that.
Yeah.
And he was just on a meeting with us the other day where he didn't necessarily have to be there. We're just going to talk to his aide about it, but he showed up. So I think that for me, it felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to contact a state representative, right? And not that they don't deserve reverence, but I feel like my issue, my thing that I wanted to advocate for, mattered a lot more on a state level than it did on a federal level, and I could impact change a little bit better.
Right. And that's, I love that you said that, because I think where people really get wrapped up is, they don't know which level they need to necessarily advocate to, because depending on the issue, the state has say over some things and the federal government has say over some things. So, usually, and when people think about civics and think about our government, they tend to focus on the federal government. They focus on the office of the president. They focus on on Congress. When really a lot of the rules, regulations, laws that affect our everyday life, and really the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that a lot of those decisions happen at the state level and can happen at the state level. So if you have an issue in your community that you want addressed, feel free to contact your federal congressman or congresswoman, but don't be afraid to contact your state legislature, because the state does a lot, and that's kind of my mission, is to make sure that people understand how much the state does. So currently, and you'll see on the Senate Bill 340 slide, I highlighted fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, because currently in the bill that was written, it does say fetal alcohol syndrome, which we are changing. We spoke to the sponsors and they're fine with that change. It's just a terminology change that brings it more up to date. That's the more appropriate term. But that is going to change once we have the first hearing in committee, and the sponsors are advocating for that first hearing. Uh, as of the House, when it comes to the House bill, we haven't had an official bill yet, but we are looking for a sponsor, or we are looking for a bipartisan sponsorship. Currently, I think the representative that we're currently working with is a Democrat, and we are looking for a Republican. We've reached out to a couple folks and are waiting to hear back. But another thing that I do want to add is, advocacy is not uh, a quick process. It can take a long time, and Bonnie Schumann, the person I worked with to get the Senate bill, she'll tell you she's been working for a couple general assemblies now to get this thing introduced. And it might seem like a very small bill, but it has the potential to have a very large impact. And you have to, when it comes to advocacy, you have to be patient, you have to be persistent, um, and you have to be involved and you have to be engaged. So Aubrey, I feel like you are the perfect example of a constituent who took an issue in their own hands and reached out and then end up really making a decent amount of headway. Because I did not have any of those conversations in the House prior to you having that conversation with your representative. So I think it's extremely important. So I will open this webinar up to questions. If anyone has any questions for Aubrey, or any questions about advocacy or about this bill specifically or about the process, please put your questions in the questions box, and we'll give folks a couple of minutes to do that. While we're waiting for questions, I do want to highlight again two bills that we have been tracking that kind of touch on this, but I mean, when we're talking about FASD, we're also talking about, availability of alcohol and, the when and how people drink, and how they gain access to drinks and when they choose to do so. We have two House bills, House Bill 669 and House Bill 674. These alcohol deregulation bills that we've been advocating for. Some of you may have received an email from me asking for you to prepare testimony because you either work or live in a county that is crucial to the committee that we're providing opponent testimony in. So if you did receive that email, please take the opportunity to engage and to help us in that advocacy. But Aubrey, I guess, could you speak to alcohol use and drinking and these sorts of issues in the time of COVID? What are we seeing data-wise?
Yeah, so it's a big concern. Sorry, my neighbor just started mowing. It's a big concern in our community about an uptick in babies born with fetal alcohol effects because of quarantine. Right now, there's a lot of justification, and I posted on my page the other day about mommy wine culture or mommy juice, and how women are actually the biggest growing population as far as having alcohol use disorder because of the marketing and because of this justification. Like, yes, being a mom is incredibly difficult. There are all these pressures, especially with this virtual schooling stuff. And this is how you solve your problems, right? And so we don't give women the practical, actual self-care tips. This is what we give them. And so that's very concerning. And it's important to note that FASD, they did a study in 2018, UNC Chapel Hill did, and they found that the numbers are the same in different socioeconomic groups. So we kind of picture this is a disability of children of alcoholics, right? But realistically, the science is showing that there's no known safe amount at any point during pregnancy, and this can even happen with fetuses that are exposed very early on before a woman even knows she's pregnant, right? So if you ask a woman, the average woman's going to say, no, I didn't drink while I was pregnant. But if you talk about the month prior to finding out that you were pregnant, there is usually some alcohol exposure there. And so that kind of conversation is difficult to have because a study came out recently that said 50% of pregnancies were alcohol exposed. And of those that were exposed in the first month, they had a 37% increased risk of miscarriage. All of that stuff is very sensitive to talk about, right? That's not just an easy conversation,
Right.
But it's an important conversation, especially when we're talking about prevention and what it looks like kind of as we continue on living at home and never leaving.
Right. 100%. So we actually do have a question. One of our listeners asked, does FASD include other prenatal drug exposure, or is there another term for that diagnosis? So I guess when it comes to other drugs and prenatal exposure, what are the other, what are the names of those other diagnoses?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a 1996 report to Congress reported that alcohol was the most dangerous substance that a fetus can be exposed to. So kind of in our heads, we think drugs. And the reason is because if a child was exposed to drugs at a certain amount at a certain point in pregnancy, they can be born and possibly diagnosed with neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is when they're born and they're struggling with addiction, right? They're coming off of the drugs. And so that, it looks terrible. It is terrible. It's incredibly physically stressful. Of course, I have a lot of friends who have parented kids with NAS. But what science is showing is that NAS or children that were exposed to drugs typically are not showing a different cognition. Their cognitive faculties are usually in place. Sometimes behaviors, but many of the developmental delays are weaning off by about age 4. And so the kids that are persisting and still having challenges are most likely, it's hard to study, but most likely being affected by alcohol because alcohol has such permanent effects and such broad effects. And so there are not childhood drug exposure diagnoses. And I think part of that is because we haven't had a strong enough correlation with like the long-term effects of drugs, whereas alcohol is very studied. We know this is exactly what it shows, and drugs, we are not seeing we're not seeing kids in elementary school that are still struggling because of drugs. We're seeing kids in elementary school who are still struggling because of alcohol. 80% of women who report using drugs during pregnancy are using alcohol as well. And so if we have a drug exposed child, we need to kind of look at alcohol and kind of assume that that was a factor.
Right. And that's a very interesting point because I feel like a lot of the time when we think about alcohol generally, uh, I feel like our society treats it as a very harmless substance, right? I mean, it's so ingrained in our social culture that a lot of people don't think about that, how, it causes long-lasting effects for these children who are exposed, via their pregnant moms. Um, it, it, it's yeah, I mean, it's shocking how okay we are with some of the cultural issues that arise when you talk about drinking habits and things like that. So, but yeah, and I don't think we have any other questions.
I can add one more
Yeah.
thing since we have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about prevention, FASD is it's a more complex thing. So many of us in our community believe that FASD is a major contributing factor to the opioid crisis, because if you have an unrecognized, untreated FASD, you are much more likely to engage in substance use as an adult. And even so, the child has the addiction gene anyways. So
Right.
we believe that this is a contributing factor to the opioid crisis. And so when we're looking at FASD intervention or helping individuals on the spectrum after they're already born and they're in school or even as adults, that in and of itself is a prevention piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because intervening and helping to support an individual on the spectrum is going to help prevent their substance use later. So FASD is not genetic, but very often when we have a child, we need to look at the parents also because of this substance use challenge.
Right.
So I think that that's really important. And then as you're talking about it today, I have images that got sent out on the email that you guys sent the other day, which was awesome. But we like to use the phraseology alcohol exposed pregnancy versus women who drink because it sounds less shaming. So if you talk about it in the public space, that's a good way to say it.
So you said alcohol exposed pregnancy. That's the proper way to refer to it. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Aubrey. I know I learned a lot, and I hope our listeners learned a lot as well. Do you want to, if anyone has questions for you, can they reach out to you personally, or do you? Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'm at info@aubreypage.org, and then I'm on just basically every social media at Aubrey Page FASD.
Right. Cool. Awesome. And if you guys have any questions for me, you know where to reach me. My email is up. Phone number is up with the extension. Please let me know if you have any questions about the FASD bill or any other bills regarding alcohol deregulation or any other bills, really, just any bill. If you guys have any questions, just let me know and I'll get to the bottom of it. Thank you so much, Aubrey, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this Wednesday. And again, thank you for everyone's. I just want to thank everyone for their patience and flexibility with the scheduling change. So I'll see you guys next time.